and welcome back to the Edu20 podcast. My name is Courtney Dumas, and I'm here with
Shannon Street.
And I don't know if you can see this because some of y'all are listening on streaming platforms, but we got an upgrade to our podcast situation here. We got a little makeover. So if you are not watching us, you should go check out. We got a whole new setup here, and I'm excited to be here yet again with Shannon. And again, this is the Edu20 podcast, and Edu20 is our company where we specialize in helping educators simplify education.
Because it's way too complicated
Way
in these teaching streets.
In the streets, yes, exactly. And so today we're going to be diving into yet another topic to hopefully simplify another element of education for you. And today we're going to be talking about moving toward goals, Shannon.
Right? I know. We've been on a series. We've been talking about the 5 priority skills, and we've only covered a couple of those. But we're going to take a step back because we're at the time of the year where we're getting into a lot of classrooms and working with a lot of schools. And we're asking the questions, what are the school's instructional goals, and are we making progress toward them? And we've also felt this in our own business a little bit, right?
Absolutely.
We've been learning a few things about goals ourselves.
We have been. And, goals, when we say goals, some of y'all are listening and you have a little trauma around goals in general, because as educators, we live and die by goals. We've got SLT goals, SIP goals, A, B, C, D, E, F, G goals. Like, we have some goals. And a lot of times we set goals to just set goals. We slap goals on walls because they look and sound real pretty. We have to show parents goals. And we have found, as we are growing as a company and we want to set goals for our future of our company and how we impact educators all around the nation, we have found that a goal is only a goal if you don't actually make steps to move toward that goal. Then why do you have it? It might look real pretty, it might sound real good on a t-shirt, but if you're not doing anything to make progress toward that, then we've got some problems. And we just realized this recently, and this is why we're popping up and talking about it in the middle of priority skills, because a lot of people at this point in the year, it's almost state testing.
Right.
And this is like the final countdown. And so people are kind of freaking out. They're like, is what we did actually moving kids toward where we need them to be? So Shannon, I want you to tell them a little bit about what we've learned when it comes to, what we can build in teachers and in students to actually reach these goals.
Well, we've noticed, and I think that this works for our team as well, internally, we want to eliminate where we're just so busy and we're feeling like we're running around all the time, and get really laser focused on what are the ways that we can get to our goals. And we've noticed that it really comes down to 2 things. You can build a person's knowledge and you can build a person's skill to actually hit a goal. And I'm going to take a step back here because I know as teachers, if we knew what the target was, we were going to do every single thing that we could to hit it.
Absolutely.
And the reason we weren't hitting it was probably because we needed to build our knowledge and we needed to build our skill. But there is an interesting caveat with this because they kind of sound like the same thing. But have you ever known somebody who was really knowledgeable about something, but didn't have the skill to execute or teach it?
Absolutely.
And I think that's what we're talking about when we talk about 2 different things. So what does that look like for educators when building their knowledge versus building their skill?
Well, I mean, there are some very specific skills we discussed with educators that you have to be able to teach children. And so we've got to make sure that we are supporting teachers in their classrooms on practicing those skills and their craft of teaching. But we also have to build their knowledge of standards, of curriculum. Like, there are other things that they have to learn in order to be able to reach the kids. So it's a twofold thing. And we have to think about, not just like as leaders of teachers, but even teachers with students. I know we do this for all of our unit unpacking with our curriculums. We have the teachers look at, what knowledge is necessary for the students to be successful on this task. What skills are necessary for students to be successful on this. And that's a whole thing in and of itself. But if I don't know what I need to get my teachers to learn the skill or the knowledge, then I'm definitely not gonna lead them to that goal. And a lot of times that's what ends up happening.
Yeah.
We're just throwing everything at the goal, hoping something's gonna stick, maybe it'll hit. But half the time we're just decorating the wall in the background because we're missing the target every time. And you're right, teachers don't want to not meet the goal. I've never met a teacher that's been like, I'm going to sabotage these children. But we also, sometimes we just don't know what we need to do to get to that magical number, that magical SPS in the sky. And so, Shannon, what are some things we can do as leaders to help our teachers reach
Well,
those
we
goals?
actually took a group of leaders through this process. Week before last, we had about 60 leaders, and we took a goal and we did the first step that you said, and that was break it down into, in order for teachers to get students to hit this instructional goal, what knowledge did the teachers need to have? And that included curriculum knowledge, standards knowledge, pedagogical knowledge, and then what skills do they need to implement the lesson, to manage the classrooms, to make that happen. And then we realized we really only have three pathways that we can use in a school to build teachers' knowledge and skill toward those goals. And the first two are professional development time and then teacher collaboration. And then what's the third pathway that we can use?
The third pathway is coaching. And so if all of those three things are not aligned to moving you toward your goals, everything feels disjointed. And I've been in PDs and PLCs and I've led those as well, that we're just like, one day we're going to collaborative planning and we're doing one thing, and the next day we're completely focused on something else, or the next week we're focused on, and I'm like, what is the through line here?
And then
There isn't.
right.
There's no through line.
Why?
And as a teacher, I mean, like, I knew, oh, we have to move our SPS from this to this. Like they said it at the beginning of every meeting. But if I don't know why I'm doing what I'm doing in that moment and how it gets me there, then it becomes irrelevant. It's just like your students in a lesson. They have to know why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
So I think there's a few things you can do as a leader. First of all, you got to go first always. I always do the analogy. I always, when I'm in PDs, I'll ask, hey, who here has ever been to Paris, France? And like maybe two people will raise their hand. And then I have everyone in the room, I have them turn to one of the people that hasn't raised their hand. And I said, would you like that person to take you on a tour of Paris, France? And they're like, no. And I'm like, why not? And they're like, because they've never been there. And I'm like, exactly. So as leaders, if you're going to lead teachers to this knowledge or to the skills, you've got to go first. You've got to do a brain dump. What is the knowledge that that teachers need? What is the skill that teachers need to have? Because everything I do in those three pathways you talked about needs to be leading there. And one of the things that we do a lot of is the coaching, if we have time. And when I say coaching, I'm not talking about going in, filling out a form and saying you went. That's just checking a box. How is what I'm telling the teacher feedback-wise today impacting that goal tomorrow, impacting that knowledge, impacting those skills? And that's something that we really need to talk about and unpack a little further, is that alignment piece, Shannon. So like, how do we get these things aligned?
Right. I think that teachers can also use this process as well. It's so important if you have a certain goal for your students to hit, like a benchmark or just something that that they've got to land their learning on. It really helps to start with that goal, break it down backwards. What knowledge do the kids need? And then what skills do they have to communicate that they've got the knowledge? And then what do they need to know first, next, last? So that was something that we did with the leaders, but we've also done it with teachers before, is to break down the goal into knowledge and skills and then tier what needs to happen first, next, and last to get to that goal. Then we can look and see, did the action steps that we took actually, or that we're taking, are they getting us there or not? So that way we're just not living in the hectic busyness of life and hoping we're getting there. We're actually being more intentional with it.
Absolutely. And I said that the leaders need to go first. This is a great activity for you to do with your teachers, for them to take ownership over the goal. So that way they'll know, hey, why are we doing this in PLCs or collaborative planning today? Oh, I remember, because our goal is to get from here, and we need this knowledge or we need this skill. And if I've gone through it and my teachers have gone through it, they understand now, oh, this is why we're doing this learning sequence. And it just helps me to keep everything tight and everything aligned. And if I'm going in the classrooms and giving feedback, I'm actually giving feedback on the skills that I'm looking for, or on the knowledge that was displayed while the teacher was teaching that lesson. Everything is laser focused. I know, like, as a school, we grew 11.7 points in 1 year because we
Wow.
were so focused on one thing. And I think, again, that's where we overcomplicate education. We want to hit all these things. And sometimes we even, dare I say, have too many goals. There's just so many things that you're trying to
Clutching my
achieve.
pearls right now.
I know, it's getting them on. I said what I said. I'm gonna stand on business.
Yeah.
But if we did just have one focus,
Yeah.
And I mean, that one year, the focus was a comprehension strategy,
Mhm.
and every subject matter used it. I'm talking
That's
math,
incredible.
social studies, science, and all the kids knew the strategy.
Yeah.
And I mean, it just basically slowed the kids down and made them think, what am I really reading about? Because,
Mhm.
our kids don't read for fun anymore, they read to finish. And so it just made them stop and kind of process what they were reading.
Right.
And I know that seems simple, but that impacted so much because it was so laser
Yeah.
focused. So think about that. I know we're not writing goals right now, but we're looking at our progress toward goals. And maybe
Mhm.
you're not getting progress toward your goal because you don't have the right action steps in place or knowledge building in place for your teachers to move toward that.
Yeah. I want to give a shout out to a principal who actually, before I even knew this process, she did it with me. So we were all meeting at the beginning of the year, looking at our data, and she set me down and she said, okay, in order for you to hit your targets for your grade and subject level this year, your students have to grow by this many points. And
That's when you puked.
I mean, I had the deer in headlights looked, and I don't cry often, but I had a few tears in my eyes
Oh,
because I was teaching my heart out. I was doing everything I knew possible. I was trying this strategy, that strategy, and she was like, okay, what can I help you do? And we ended up taking that goal and we broke it down backwards and said, okay, I can't fix everything. I have so many differentiated learning levels in my room. I can't fix everything. But what would be the one area I could focus on and leverage and build my knowledge and build my skill to get students a little bit closer? And we had narrowed it down. I was teaching ELA at the time, and she said, let's just focus on writing. We knew that writing was a significant portion of their state test. And she had me work backwards. Okay, what skills? And she took me through the kids' knowledge and skills. What do they need to know? What skills do they need to take? And let's work to get them there. And just by focusing on one area and focusing on the knowledge and skills that I needed to be able to teach it, and then focusing on the knowledge and skills that the kids needed to get there, we actually exceeded our target. And it was one of the biggest moments in my teaching career of I felt like something was in my control, because when we have all these goals out here and we don't have a really clear plan to get there, it feels like the calendar, the curriculum, everything is controlling us. But this was the first time I remember in my teaching career where I felt like I took a little bit of control back. And it was so powerful because then I could look back and see, did what I invest my time in, was it worth it? Did it work? And that was pretty exciting.
it's so funny because we couldn't be more opposite. I was given a goal and I was just like, you know what? I'm going to teach the best I can and hopefully we'll hit that goal. And you were like, I meticulously planned. No, shout out to your leader for that.
Yeah. Bonnie
Because
Patterson, love you.
I think that that's one of the hardest things, especially for leaders right now, because you're not a building manager anymore. Like you
Right.
have to be an instructional leader, and a lot of leaders don't feel comfortable with all the content. They can't possibly know all the content and all
Yeah.
the curricula, right?
Yeah.
But when you're coming up with a list of knowledge that teachers would need, a lot of times if you don't know the standards that well as a leader, or you don't know the curriculum that well, or
Yeah.
even like just the progression of standards, it's very intimidating to do something like this. But this is where you leverage your all stars. We've got to see the great teachers that are out there, and this is where you go to those stronger teachers and you say, "Hey, I'm looking at this goal right now, and I'm trying to break this down, and I have no idea what kind of knowledge I need." Pick their brains. That's going to validate them. And a lot of times those are the teachers that don't get much attention because they're not on fire. And so shout out to your leader for tapping into what you know and just, building, like pouring into you in that moment, because I think
Changed my
that's
teaching
a power
career.
move right there. And again, that's of course what we're going to try to do
Yeah.
as, business leaders, because it's all the same thing.
Right.
But I think there's a level of ownership that goes into it that you have to take, as a
Right.
leader, and then even as a teacher, we have to feel like we're on the same page, and that's where that alignment comes in. But once you have that goal and you have that knowledge and those skills, and then you've prioritized them like
Yeah.
tiers. You're really good at tiering things. I'm not so good at things. I just, have tiers. Um, so once you get those priorities, I feel like it's just so much more clear and coherent
Yeah.
for teachers. We're all on the same page. We're all moving at the same, steps to that goal.
One way that we've seen this process be really effective is that when working with leaders, it can feel so overwhelming just to sift through all the data, even to identify a goal. But once you do, And then you plan out some steps to take by breaking it down into knowledge and skills. I did this with a high school before with their algebra data. So the algebra data was, it was lagging well behind where they wanted it to be. So we made a goal. And then we broke that down into what knowledge our teacher's going to need to be able to hit this target and what skills are they going to need. And when we looked at the specific teachers, we were realizing one of the teachers had never been through curriculum training before for the particular curriculum they were using and was making his own assessments because he didn't even know where the assessments are. So that gave us an immediate first step. So the school reached out to the district, said, hey, we need a little curriculum training here. Come and help us out. And then they targeted some PLC planning time that they had to looking at that student data and what are next steps. And they started seeing progress toward the goals. They planned out some action steps. It was super exciting. So it goes beyond just having a goal. It comes back to what knowledge and skills do teachers need to hit that goal. And we found it's most effective when you include the teachers in the process. Absolutely. What knowledge and skills do you need to hit this target effectively? And then that directs your next action steps. And it eliminates the, why am I getting coached? Why am I, and we're going to talk about this in another episode, I know, but keeping everything coherent is just so powerful.
Just takes the lift off of you
Yeah.
too. It's almost like lesson planning ahead of time
Right.
instead of making decisions in the moment. And so the big takeaways here are like, make sure that you have the coachable steps and the moves that are broken down between knowledge and skills. That's the big one. Break your goal down into knowledge and skills, and then of course prioritize, but then put all of your resources toward moving teachers through that knowledge and building those skills, because that's where you're going to get movement on those goals. The scattershot approach is no longer working.
Right.
So we've got to get real clear. And then we also have to give them some ownership in that process. So once you've gone through that process, make them take them through it, make them own it. And then we can start picking places to progress monitor and things like that. But I think just simplifying, again, y'all, just breaking it down step by step will take a load off of the teacher and the leaders.
Absolutely. And it's exciting when you start seeing that progress and when you figure out if is what I'm doing working. That's one of the big things that we want to know. So, Courtney, if they want to know more or follow us and find out more information about what we do and how we're helping teachers and leaders, where can they check us out?
Well, I'm sure it's somewhere in the show notes, but if you check us out at edu2020.com, that's the words written out, edu2020.com. You can see some of our work there. Also follow us on social media, like, subscribe down below. And we are looking forward to seeing you at the next episode of the Edu2020 podcast. Thanks for joining us, y'all.